5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yep, and we're live.
Yeah, hi everyone, and a very, very warm welcome here from Denmark. Finally, it's our turn, and I'm so thrilled to be here with you. So my name is Susan, and I will be your moderator for the next 60 minutes. And with me, I have three extraordinary keynotes who will share their thoughts and observations on the impact that the pandemic has had on our communities. So they will talk about three quite different topics, but nevertheless, topics that are all very important to take into consideration, both in our business and as well as our personal lives. So you are more than welcome to write questions in the Q&A. We will have approximately 15 minutes in the end of this part of the event. So I invite you to just lean back and enjoy yourselves with us here. And I am honored to introduce you to our first keynote speaker, who is the most brilliant and talented and funny futuristic speakers on the entire planet. Also, she is very warm-hearted and totally down to earth. And she's the kind of person that you get the feeling that she knows things. And I don't know if she made a special arrangement with the universe or what, but I'm sure that you will get this feeling as well. And today she will share her perspective on a new understanding in regards of being introvert versus extrovert that we can take advantage of in our future work environments. So please, ladies and gentlemen, here is Anne Skar.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you to you, Susan, for that wonderful introduction. Yes, my name is Anne. I'm a mother of 4, and I have a company called Universal Futurist, where we teach people how to predict their own futures. And I have been so delighted listening in, because the sensation that I get is that even though these are troubling times, I think that this is the first time ever that we have been sitting all over the world in a quarantine where everybody is kind of like in the same boat. And we also have social media on top of that. I think we owe it to ourselves to think that to really, take in that this is textbook, this is historic material. In 20, 30, 100 years from now, people were going to study what did people actually do when given these special circumstances. So yes, I will talk about the introverts and the extroverts. Listening into the coffee break, I could also see that that was the subject that people were touching upon. And in my experience, also being called upon as a futurist with journalists or politicians or business leader wanting to know what is going to happen post-corona, I start talking about the introverts and the extroverts, and that's all they want to hear about. So I think that there's a longing in the time right now to dig deeper into that subject. But before I go there, I would just love to just take 2 minutes to teach you all how to predict the future, because it's actually not that hard. When you see the future, and the reason why I think it's important that you have that skill set to predict your own future is because that right now so much stuff is happening. And that means that if you take your future sense, as we call it, and you don't know what to do with it, what typically happens is that you will just expand whatever you believed before. So if you were a vegetarian and you see corona, then you'll say, okay, I was right. Look, a Chinese person ate a bat and this is what happens. Everybody should become a vegetarian. See, I was right about the future. Or if you don't believe in liberalism, then you would say, see, this is neoliberalism at its worst. We are all interconnected. We can't even take 1 hour out of our time. Then airplanes start falling from the skies because the economic system is so fragile. I was right all along. So you can see that when you're talking to your friends, your family, your spouses, your co-workers, everybody kind of like have an idea about what is going to happen in the future, but it's based on what they believe to begin with. So when you see into the future now, do you believe that the world is a horrible place and we are all running out of resources fast and it's just a matter of time before we are going to have to cook kebabs out of each other? Or do you choose to see something else? Do you see that it's actually better, that the world is improving? And even though, the horrible things is happening, like what is happening in the States right now with another Black guy being killed by police, then you could choose to see it as something, that the world is going down the tube, but you could also choose to see, okay, I actually believe that the world is coming together. that right now this enlightenment of what is going on because we have social media is pushing us in a different direction. So when you're looking into the future, you need what we call the MBS. So not the MBA, but an MBS. And an MBS is your future sense. It's your mind, it's your body, it's your soul. So when you use your mind to predict the future, we're looking at what is. We're looking at data and statistics and things we can show and tell, what can come out of our mouths. But the body, the sensation, the Germans will call it Fingerspitzengefühl, your intuition, where I can't really put a word on it, but I just have this feeling, I can see it, but I don't really feel it, or it feels annoying, or you could also feel it as a longing. And that's actually very, very important when we want to dive into the future. And that's also why we need this introversion, to be in a position where we can feel the future and we can make sense of the future, and where we don't always have to talk about it or make a PowerPoint presentation. If Christopher Columbus had to make a PowerPoint presentation before he went from Europe to discover America, I don't think he would have put in a pineapple because maybe he wouldn't even have left, because how would you predict something that you have never seen before? So it's the mind, it's the body, and then the final part in the puzzle is your soul. Your soul is energy, it's culture, it is what you believe in. And what you believe is always a choice. So if you believe that this is just, a stress moment and we should get back on track as fast as possible, that is what is going to happen. Then we will see this Corona break as just, putting pause on society and let's get it over with, and that was it. If you believe something else, if you believe what I'm believing, that is that we are now moving from more to better. We are moving into a new planetary, hyper-connected and very complicated phase in humanity, where we should actually choose to see life as a computer game. We should choose to see that there are different levels that we can play, but actually the whole purpose of playing the game, being alive, going to school, going to work, is to learn something about yourself. And it is to build the new communities that will solve problems together. So believing in that, I think, is just the big point into the future. And maybe that is why everybody loves to talk about the introverts and the extroverts when I address them. And for many of you listening in, I'm sure that you know the new science about the introverts and the extroverts. If you haven't heard about it, and I might say that because you're probably all very smart and intellectual people, you have heard about it, but that's maybe 1% of the planet who has heard about it. And then we have 99% who still believe that an introvert is a shy person and an extrovert is like a social butterfly. It's like, I'm looking at Susan and then I'll say she's an extrovert. She's beautiful, she has a big smile on, she's articulate, she's a wonderful person. I want to have drinks with Susan. And a shy person would be, yeah, that's the extrovert, right? And the shy person would be like, it's just, and I just sit over here with my coffee. But that is not so. An introvert is a person who needs to be alone to fill up energy. An extrovert is a person who needs to be in contact with other people to fill up energy. And it's quite puzzling to see that we have believed for many years that we are actually heading into the new phase of the introverts, because we have had the pendulum swinging over to extroverts, where everybody had to talk, everybody had to raise their finger in school. If you had a child who was silent and just wanted to read a book, that's kind of like, what weird child is this? Not speaking, just studying. This is awful. If you have a job interview, you have to put yourself forward, you have to sell yourself. We honor the people who can go up on stage and we applaud them and say, this is wonderful. And then all the people who wanna just, can I just sit and reflect? Is it just okay if we take a break? Like Justin Trudeau did the other day when he was asked about what he felt about the situation in the States, and he actually paused and reflected for 1 minute. And that actually makes a bigger impact than all the words that he could say. That is the longing for introversion. So when Corona hits, my feeling, and I'm sure that I'm sharing this with a lot of you guys, is that this is just great. I lost all my customers. I had like zip amount of money in my accounts, but my energy level in my body was just like, oh my God, I could do this forever. No physical contact, no parties. I had to go to the store to buy some fish, and I had to have like, 3 meters. Like, I think that's like, 3 feet is that? Is it 9 feet? It's like a long distance to other people, just talking with them and not hugging them. And I just felt my body like, oh, this is life. And then the extroverts, they'll say, but I enjoy being in my own company. And then the introverts will go, yeah, but you get sick and tired of it. I don't. I could be on this deserted island in my own company forever. So what we see is like 50% of the world's population will go indoors, read a book and say, this is wonderful. Order online, we can have meetings online and that's fine and I can shut it off. And then all the extroverts, it's like, we were 5 minutes into the quarantine and they are hanging out the windows with their Zumba classes and their drinks on Friday with virtual beer, and everybody has to talk with everybody all the time. And they were like so stressed out. I thought as a futurist, this is so interesting. How do we grasp this trend that it's actually okay now to say as an introvert, I want to stay at home because I have stuff to do. I don't need to talk with people all the time. If I have the sniffles, I should actually be able to say to my school teachers or the students, we're doing it online today because I have the sniffles. I don't want to, give you guys a disease. Where beforehand, at least I say in Scandinavia, that if you stayed home because you had a little bit of the sniffles, then people would say, okay, so you're working from home today, right? And I think that could change a lot. And I think that if we could honor that people actually have this need and this longing to be introverts. Somebody wants to be it all the time. That's also not good. Yeah. Somebody can't cope with it at all. That's also not good. But could we meet in the middle somehow? Because I think that could be a huge step into what the future is. And that is that we would like to see people just blossom on their own premises. So I could say that, Susan, if I know about what Susan needs and what you like and what stresses you out, do you like to talk on the phone? Are you okay with the online meetings? Is it important for you to go out and walk and talk? If I know that about you, if we know that about each other, I think that we can bring the world education, workplaces, school system into a whole new playing ground in the game of the future, where it's not about more, it's about better. Not more education, better education. Not a longer life, but a better life. Not a trailblazing economy on the outskirts for more, but what we're actually thinking about, we have to do better. We have to solve problems. So I think that were my 10 minutes.
That was so interesting. Thank you so much, Anne. And I have a few questions. So you talk about the MBS. How do you bring that into place at the work environments? Do leaders have access to this?
Yes, they do. And I'm actually very delighted that you're asking, Susan, because you already passed. Everybody who's listening out there, you already passed. Like, in the old days, you would have an MBA, the Master of Business Administration. We say, no, in the future, you need the MBS. It's not okay just to be a head. You have a body and you have a soul. And we all know this feeling of walking into a room and then having this sensation in the soul, in the body, culture, energy, where you're thinking, this is a nice place to be. I can speak my mind, and I feel at home because they have actually invested in the energy. You can see that skilled people actually want to be in those kinds of environments, because even though it's online, you can actually nurture to have that online if you have great leadership, where it's trusting and where there's diversity and where it's okay to just come and say, I dreamt about a giraffe last night, so now I have this idea for something that we can do. And then people will meet you with, oh my God, yes, I can't see it and I don't understand it, but I can feel that we are moving in the right direction. So I think that knowing that you already have it, you have the MBS, but maybe you forgot about it because you were doing, more and being credited for just doing mind stuff.
True. So what does that require for people at work? Do they have to be more brave in order to adjust?
I think we have to be more human.
And
we have to be, and we have to be a little bit more courageous. And when I see courageous, that could just be a little bit more spontaneous. People would often credit me for being very courageous. And I say, no, I just don't have any sense of reality. So I'm kind of like just leaping into stuff because I'm not thinking so much about it. I'm listening to what my intuition says, and that is, you know, you have to try it, and then your mind will follow. And I think that that's very natural when you're looking into the future. I'm sure that many people will agree with me that they say that, you know, the robots are coming, automation is coming, digitalization is coming. So if you're working like a robot, if you have a job where you're thinking, you know, a robot could do this, nobody would ever tip me, you know, because I'm not doing something that's actually I'm doing something of value, but I'm not having an impact as a person. And if you can do that, you know, then it will be automated, and that will set us free to become something else, not more, but better. And what would you be other than just being, you know, yourself?
True, true, very true. And how inspiring. So thank you so much, really. Thank you so much, Anne, for those inspiring words, really.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it. Thank you so much. And with that, we will move on to our next keynote speaker here today. And that is you, Garrett. And Garrett, he works as a behavioral economist at Homesite Insurance in Boston. And he is working as a scientist, is trained as an economist, and is an entrepreneur by heart, right? So when he's not working, he's running the app called Quinn, and that is very interesting as well. It's an app that helps people spend less money online by using behavioral science. Very, very interesting. But today, however, he is going to enlighten us on something different, and that is how the physical actions of trust is, in particularly in businesses, how they have shifted. So Garrett, a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Would you mind just passing the screen sharing over to me? I have a brief few slides. Give us just 1 minute to get this set up. I think you can do it now, Garrett. All right. Are we able to see the screen? Yes. Wonderful. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining in from. As Susan mentioned, I'm a behavioral scientist, and consumer behavior is what makes me tick. It's what excites me. And so when asked to think about this question today, I got really excited because there's some wild shifts that are currently happening in the field of consumer behavior. And if we talk about the question, will people ever return to normal in-person processes? The simple answer is no. I don't expect that to happen, nor do I believe many do. COVID has changed the world as we know it. Until there is really a set way forward with safety and security and confidence that we can have, that we can live our lives as we used to without the fear or worry, I don't foresee people moving back into interpersonal reactions, especially when it comes down to consumer behavior. The CDC has often said that we're not sure when this will end, and that's really at the point where we need to turn to ourselves as industry leaders, as business professionals, as consumers, as individuals, and really say, what's next? And this is really the time where companies need to look inside and say, what can we do to stay ahead, as we know there are likely to be shifts in the way that people shop, in the way that they interact, and in the way that we speak to them. Just in the past few weeks, online shopping has nearly doubled in several markets. And the reason for this is, as we're now allowed to go out in the open, we still want that comfort of shopping. I spend a lot of time thinking about shopping, and there's good shopping and bad shopping, the shopping for things we need and the shopping for things we want. And COVID has really taken a shift of both of those and moved them online, which is quite interesting to see. There are several companies that are really taking the innovation to heart. Amazon, a global firm, as you may know, has really done a lot of work in the past few weeks and months on operationalizing their back end, their processes to make it so that we can all shop online, at least at a larger scale than once was previously thought. There have been also front-end changes that innovative companies have made. And in the States here, we have Grubhub, and Grubhub's a food delivery platform. But one thing that they've done really amazed me. Within a few days of social distancing guidelines being enacted, they had what's called contact-free delivery. This allowed the driver, a food delivery driver, to leave food on your doorstep, ring the bell, and walk away. Now, I remember my first time experiencing this, as I'm sure many of you in the audience have also remembered the first time you had a contact-free delivery, or the moment that some interaction that you had started to change. It might have been different. There might have been a 2-meter distance between the person next to you at the store, or you might have even realized that your favorite local store has been closed. These were all changes that were happening, and oftentimes we see These changes are very prominent in tech-focused companies, but with all the changes going on in society now, it's important for any laggards that might have relied on in-person interactions, face-to-face behavior, to start to move operations in thinking about how we interact with customers online. As we know, it's 2020, we should ask ourselves, why are people still having to go into banks to complete certain transactions? Why do we still have to go into certain stores, meet with certain professionals face-to-face? We should envision a world where this starts to change. And now that that impetus is actually here, it's important to start thinking about how these changes will occur and how they'll occur successfully. The reason why people really like going inside stores and meeting people face-to-face is quite simple, actually. Just as you can see my face now, we use our eyes to process a lot of information. This is important when you walk into a store, especially to see an object. You want to know that what you're about to buy is what you're going to get. On a similar vein, when you go and talk to a professional, whether that's a lawyer, a doctor, insert any sort of interpersonal relationship outside of friends and family there, you like seeing that facial interaction. These are very important feedback loops that start to guide a lot of our behavior. And as Susan had mentioned, trust is very important in that. And I think it's now good that we start to take an example and approach to understand why people might have preferred before to shop in person and why they're starting to move online. Now, I'll use the example of insurance just because that's my domain, but this really applies to all industries out there. And I do want to focus on insurance because it's an industry that's built on trust. Consumers trust that when they purchase an insurance policy, the carrier will be able to pay out if anything goes wrong. Likewise, insurance carriers trust that I won't burn my house down. It's a real two-way street that this dynamic is built on, and it's the reason why people still to this day, quite amazingly, still choose to go in to purchase insurance at what we'll call a Main Street America agent. This is that local store, the local friend, someone who might be in the community, to purchase their insurance in person. And this really has to do with trust, but there's a little more that underpins that just in the way that we behave as humans. We start to prefer brick and mortar commerce for three main reasons, if you will. One is that the people that we interact with usually are our peers. They live in our town, they might be our neighbors, and we really know that they're part of the community at heart. They're not someone that's going to appear one day and disappear the next. And that's something that people really take into heart and take into account. Taking that a step further, if you ever have a question, going into a store, you know you're going to get an answer immediately, rather than waiting online in an automated queue when who knows when your answer comes. You can actually go in and talk to a person face to face. And lastly, there are physical representations of trust that exist beyond just what we see. Shaking hands after completing a successful business deal, whether that's purchasing insurance or just buying cheese at the local shop. That's one thing where you're able to actually seal the deal in person. We have a lot of ways that we convey trust physically. Handshakes are one of them. It's a bond between two people to know that what happened is really solidified and set. And that's something that really make up the hallmarks of brick and mortar commerce. But I want to start to ask the question, what happens when this is no longer feasible? Trust is something that's deeply ingrained in human behavior. We actually have parts of our brain that light up, if you will, to use the fMRI, the neuroscience term behind it, when people start to think about trust. Trust is something that we crave inherently. It's something that defines all of our relationships, from those in our inner circle like our family, to our friends, to even those in our community around us. We have a lot of trust, and we need to focus on that as the way forward, because as things start to shift, as we don't see people face to face often, we need to ensure that that's maintained. It's not going away, and the need for that won't. We really do see the future as being digital. Until it's safe to do so, people are enjoying the convenience of engaging online with customers and professionals and different sort of businesses. But we know that in order to make the shift, we can't just move everything online overnight. While coronavirus might have changed a lot of our lives within the span of a few days, it's important for us to think about how we successfully transition business operations to a digital sense. And this doesn't just apply to the large corporations like Amazon and Grubhub that are already taking advantage of this. This applies to everyone, not just because you're a laggard and you haven't taken an innovative or digital first approach, but because this is where the industry is shifting, and it's soon to be the foremost channel at which we compete will be digital in the future days. Now you might ask, how do we start to build trust? How do we shift this relationship? And it's actually in a vein that we've already seen out in the market today. If you shopped online, chances are you've seen reviews, you've seen testimonials, and you might have seen some even cooler things like accreditations from national or international organizations. These are what we're called social proof points, and they're quite interesting because they're very small pixels on a screen, but what they represent is something quite larger. Social proof is often used as the behavior of those around us, and we take that inside to inform what we do. If you see a lot of people lining up outside of a restaurant, you might go to that restaurant. Similarly, in a digital sense, social proof is like that. Seeing testimonials from customers who have had great experiences, this is something that we start to trust and take into account. So as we move online, carrying through these digital representations of trust to ensure that we're able to select the right product, select the right thing for us, and make the choices that are right for who we are, whether it's just in our budgets or the time that we spend to go shopping for something. Consumer behavior is rapidly changing, and it's time that we start to really reinforce social proof. Just for a quick example here, we know that the retail industry, and retail apparel in particular, has used this for quite some time to some success. But they actually have an interesting dynamic where people still go in store. 75% of purchases for clothing and shoes are still bought in store rather than online. But one of the important pushes that they've done, and we'll continue to see even more within commerce, is that social proof will help people understand what they're getting, why they're getting it, and that what they're getting is the quality that they expect. And this is where trust really comes into play. Because we lack that physical touch and that interpersonal interaction, we don't have those same cues, but we're still able to build trusting relationships as consumers with brands that we see there, whether they're new ones that we haven't engaged with before or ones that we're seeking to try out. Trust is really at the forefront. And just to reiterate here, this is not just for the local mom and pop shop or the local pub. This is for everyone to take into account of how we represent ourselves online. You can even imagine if you start to have work calls that the way we start to interact will change. And likewise, the way we start to build trust in relationships with people outside of our direct physical contact will start to shift. Again, trust, 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 trust. We need to build trust, especially as consumers start to expect more digital first experiences wherever they go. Trust is the thing that will help us maintain competitive edge. Not only a competitive edge, it'll help people develop further relationships screen to screen rather than face to face, which is what we enjoy. The question always comes up, how do we align what we were doing before with our business or what were we doing before with our trust to what's going to happen in the digital sense? And the answer is quite simple. If you're able to align the trust that you have in person, and a great example of this is if you have a sustainability initiative and you post your sustainability in store, bring that online. If you focus on quality, bring some of those representations of quality online, maybe through social proof, like reviews, customer pictures, and things of that nature. It's important to align the trust that we had before to the trust that we have now to adapt to the coming changes in consumer behavior. And it's quite an interesting time. And as a behavioral scientist, I think we're all excited and starting to take a look at what's next. And then how do we take us to the next step, especially as our behavior is starting to shift drastically. I wish I could shake all your hands, but I think we have to do a digital farewell for now. So that's the end of the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much for that, Garrett. Very, very interesting as well. And I was wondering, tell me, how do small businesses, how do they adapt to these changing trends?
Exactly. So it's something that's happening a lot faster for small businesses, but it's important to stay always thinking of the step ahead. And we've seen this in local communities, reaching out to kind of their networks to keep interacting, but also thinking about how do we invest in what's next. It's often a large investment for certain smaller businesses to make a technical change, but it doesn't have to be that large of a jump. Starting with taking orders via phone and talking to customers, reaching out, establishing those relationships that used to be in store to then bring them into a digital or contactless experience is one great way to start there.
Okay, all right. So could you give us a few more very concrete examples of what actually to do to build that trust? You already gave a few examples, but I'm just curious if you have some more examples to share with us.
Yeah, I have to. So if you ever think in a digital setting, websites are important. Start to reach out to people that you know have had successful experiences. Start to reach out to people who have had a very successful relationship with the business, and then ask their opinion, and then start to share that with others. This is how you can leverage social proof within different things, whether it's in an email saying, you know, we had 10 satisfied customers yesterday, or people like yourself really like coming in here. These are all ways to just take lines of text, simple copy that you can use in any setting and start to build trust more and more. It's exactly like representing that digital line outside of a restaurant, just by showing that, you know, people are still engaging and you're still offering the same quality and service that you did before.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Garrett, for that inspirational talk here. Very, very, very interesting as well. Thank you so much. And Christina, you are our last keynote for this part of the event. And you are a Fulbright scholar and a candidate for a master in behavioral and decision sciences at the University of Pennsylvania. Quite a long line there. And also you hold a master in public policy. And you work with international development in organizations. And you actually did you conducted a behavioral intervention in London back in 2019 that you were also nominated an award for. And what's interesting is that the results and insights that you gained there are actually very, very, very top of mind right now, so to speak. It's very, very important to look at those results and insights. So we are so thrilled that you will share some of that with us here today, Christina. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Susan. I'm just going to share my screen really quickly. Let me know if you see it.
We see it.
Okay, perfect. Just let me put this. Okay, so thank you very much, Susan, again. And it's a pleasure for me to be here in this panel. As you said, like I'm a candidate for the Master in Behavioral and Decision Sciences here in the University of Pennsylvania. I'm not in Philadelphia. So good morning to everyone in this side of the ocean, and good afternoon to everyone around the world. So yes, I'm going to present an intervention that I performed in London last year. And the main aim of this presentation is what can we do to promote sanitary practices in shared spaces as fitness centers, and what can we learn from our pre-COVID world in which we have a lot of evidence, a lot of information. How can we adapt those lessons to this new post-pandemic world that we are now living and we're going to live after all that is happening. So just to give a quick overview, we have now seen how behavior has changed around the world. When we go on the streets, we see how people are wearing face masks. That's the new rule. How can people are keeping social distancing when just having an informal conversation in public spaces. Even public and political leaders are limiting themselves from shaking hands, something that was almost part of the job a few months ago. And just overall, and how also like Garrett and Anne was saying, like we are not keeping social distancing in every possible activity that we're doing. If we're going to a grocery shopping, to a pharmacy, we need to keep social distancing in order to get in, because now there's limited space for everyone to be inside the store. So our behavior is changing. So now it seems that changing our behavior in shared spaces is crucial from now on, but monitoring or enforcement is not possible or always efficient, because we cannot monitor what everyone is doing at the same time. So if we cannot do that, how can we enforce, or how can we make sure that people are complying with public health guidelines in order to decrease the contagion of the virus, or to have a more sustainable public health in the future, if we need to stick with these guidelines from now on? So in this sense, we need voluntary collective action in order to do so. And we need people to understand the consequences of their actions and the benefits of complying with public health guidelines, and we need them to do that in a voluntary manner. So again, we have a lot of information now. There has been a lot of experiments going on during this pandemic that show how people can comply with these public health guidelines. But again, we have a lot of information from before the pandemic started. So what lessons can we draw from all of that evidence that we already have? How can that evidence inform us, our post-pandemic world? And that's exactly what I'm going to present with this very specific intervention that I conducted last year. So the setting of the intervention was, as I like to call, our pre-COVID world, also known as 2019, something that seems so far away, but it was actually last year. And the location was in London at University College London Student Gym, because this was, as Susan established, this was part of a final school project that I did. And the problem that I identified was a very specific problem. That was that exercise mats were getting dirty very quickly. And I was a user of this gym, fun fact. So I was experiencing this at first hand. So targeted behavior that I identified was that people were using the exercise mats with their shoes on. So this was one of the drivers of mats getting dirty very quickly. So just to make this story short, and after conducting a lot of literature review and interviews, I came up with this behavioral design, which was a behavioral informed poster that combined three main behavioral insights, if we can tell. The first one was reciprocity. The second one was the EASE guidelines, which are the guidelines from the behavioral insights team to promote effective communications. And the third one was to provide actionable steps and rewards. So if you can see the poster, it's a very simple poster with a very simple formula. If you take your shoes off, that's going to be equal to cleaner mats and to a happier workout. That's the actionable step, and that's the reward. And let's help each other, because this is something that we cannot achieve if only one person comply with the guideline. We need all to be together in this adventure, if we can say it. So yes, and this is also something that I try to design in a very attractive manner. And just to enhance this behavioral design, this poster, out of the idea that maybe not only information is necessary to change people's behavior, I also incorporate another behavioral component that was inspired by the broken windows theory. What this theory says is that when you have a clean environment, that decreases bad behaviors. And the opposite, if you have an environment that shows signs of deterioration, that can induce bad behaviors such as crime. So this theory was widely used a few years ago in New York City. And the way that I adapted this theory to this intervention was that I replaced the old dirty mats with new clean mats, out of the idea that maybe if people know that they are exercising with new mats that are clean, they will be more likely to comply with the information that I'm giving them in the poster. So this very quickly, again, this was the evaluation design, and something very important to say is that this was not a randomized control trial. This was not an experimental design, because I couldn't limit people, the number of people that were in the gym or not, because this was a public space. So what I did is, in the first day, I just monitor how many people took their shoes off without poster, without new mats. And the next day, I divided the day in two. In the morning, I only displayed the poster, and in the afternoon, I displayed the poster plus the new mats. And the results were fairly impressive. And the outcome was very simple, very specific. It was just measuring the number of people that took their shoes off. So you can see, with no intervention, only 11% took their shoes off. When I displayed the poster, that increased to 38% of people taking their shoes off. But when I introduced the new mats plus the poster, that increased even more to 74% of people. So this is a huge effect if we compare this to no intervention to poster. This is more than 60 percentage points of difference. And again, this was not an experimental design. So strictly speaking, we cannot say that there is a causal relation in these results, but it will be very interesting to test this in a randomized control trial. And again, the effect is huge. So we might assume that there's something going on that made people take their shoes off. And here, just to show you the results a bit bigger, you can see that the poster was located exactly where people were exercising, in order to people to adapt their behavior in a timely manner. You want to give people the information in a timely manner. That's something very important from a behavioral science point of view. And then you can see in the picture on the left how at one point of the day, everyone took their shoes off. So this was something very interesting for me to see also as a user of that gym. And just some lessons to wrap up and just to start the conversation. It appears that we can use reciprocity to promote sanitary behavior, but the effect seems larger when it's combined with other changes in the choice architecture, such as replacing old mats with new mats. And some ideas to adapt this lesson to our post-pandemic world. So for example, we can keep our public spaces with a good smell, public spaces in which we want people to have, we want people to act in a certain manner. So for example, we can keep public bathrooms with a good smell, because keeping a clean environment is not only keeping clean floors or clean walls, is also the whole experience of the user. Also highlighting the importance of complying for the common good. You are not complying because you are the only one that is benefiting, it's because of a public good. And also, in line with this, what's the personal benefit, and in line with reciprocity, what am I getting out of complying with the guidelines, even though I'm complying for a common good. So yes, thank you very much, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Christina. Thank you for that. And I'm curious about those findings. So interesting. How do you suggest that we apply these findings in our business life, for instance?
Okay, yes, in business life, for example, in business life or in our life, sorry?
Yeah, at businesses.
Yeah, so for example, in businesses, this is also relevant because you need to make sure that the businesses are complying with the public health guidelines, even though this is probably more relevant for governments. But for example, in a business as a fitness center, you need to make sure that people are complying with these guidelines and that you are not part of the problem. So how to incentivize your customers to comply with these guidelines in your business. So this might be a good idea, not only for fitness centers in this case, also for example, in supermarkets. You want to make sure that people are keeping social distancing, that people are wearing their face masks, so inside the store. And again, you cannot do this via enforcement because it might be less efficient. So it might be more efficient if you just use these behavioral tools around your store in order for people to comply with these guidelines, and for you as a business to make sure that your business is safe in some kind of way.
And what do you think? Do you think that the attention will decrease within time? I mean,
yeah, that's a good question, because we also see how we are experiencing behavioral fatigue, for example, of staying home. People are experiencing this fatigue that, okay, I'm stayed home a lot of time, like I need to go out. Maybe people can also experience this behavioral fatigue with the guidelines. So I don't want to wear these face masks again, even though you are showing me this in the poster, I don't want to. So maybe in this case, we need to be more strict on the messages that we are sending, and to also to make sure that people expectations are clear, that this is not only something that we need to do for a few months, we need to do this maybe for a while, and for people to adjust their expectations and just to comply with these guidelines for a longer time.
So how do you suggest that we maintain the focus and make it like a habit? And you talk about having a volunteer attitude. How do we do that?
Yes, it's tricky, and I can also say this from a personal perspective. I think that we need to establish routines, and routines with steps that are very clear. So for example, if you want, because we have this fatigue and we also have cognitive overload, we have a lot of information going on about the virus and everything. So you need to make sure that you are addressing those in a personal manner. So for example, in my case, I always forget my face mask. So I need to go out again, come back again to pick the face mask. So what I'm doing now is that in every purse that I have and in every jacket, I have a face mask. So make sure that you nudge yourself in order to make this more easy for you to comply.
Yeah, sure. So is it about making things a habit, you think?
Yes, it's making things a habit and incorporating these new habits into your routine. So you have in your purse, your phone and your wallet, put a face mask as well. Make that something as a default in your purse.
All right.
Yeah.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Christina.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now we're ready to move on to the Q&A. And let me just see if there are any questions here. We have a question from Sarah. And it says here, what's your advice for balancing more personal service and the expediency we've come to expect from digital experiences? Anyone? Yeah, Anna, please.
Yeah, I can do that. I hope that I understand the question correctly, but I think that how do you get that? Actually, as a futurist, we call it high tech, high touch. That's an old book that was written around the year 1999, I think, but the trend still holds. And the trend is that the more tech the world becomes, the more we need touch. So tech is not something that can stand by itself, and it's also not an enemy. It's just a condition that you use. But what you can see from people's behavior is that the more you get tech into your life, the more you crave touch. You crave the human side, the attention, what Garrett was talking about, that you want some sort of social proof. You want to know that there's somebody out there who cares about what it is that you do, which is not just about the numbers. So the more you can get online with your doctor, the more you can get an artificial intelligence to monitor your health, the more you will actually crave that there is a guide or there's some sort of person out there that knows your history, knows that you just had a divorce or that you have a child with autism, so that they are listening to all the little cracks, and then you can get the high tech, high touch. And for many, many years, we've just been so focused on tech that we think that tech will solve everything, that we get, if we get it faster or you get a broadband 5G, then that is going to solve everything. But what we will see probably from success now is that the companies or the organizations, even the schools that will succeed, are focusing on tech, but very much also on getting the touch part up in the balance. So I think that we see that many companies are thriving with is that they just do just a basic FaceTime video where you can call your shoe seller and then you can say, hey, I saw that the sneakers were on sale. Can you just show them to me? And then they will take up the phone and then they will FaceTime. And then I can see, maybe they will even pick and say, okay, there's a girl, she's basically your size and looks a little bit like you. I'll just make her walk by so that you can see how the shoes look on this person. And in Denmark, at least, they can see that actually gives people a higher degree of closing the cell than having free shipping. And free shipping in Denmark is like huge, guys. We love free shipping. But that you can actually see that this relationship where I'm building and starting to have also the social proof that Garrett is talking about could be one of the ways that's very, very basic and very, very simple. If I should say another example is, I think she's an American. Her name is Marie Tash, and she has a high-end level of stores where you can get your ears pierced with jewelry. And when I saw that, it's like, okay, that's goddamn amazing. Because if you are a woman or a man and you want to get your ears pierced, you have two ways of doing that. Either you go to a jewelry store and you can only get like 1 or 2 different, or maybe 5 different styles of ears jewelry in your ear. And then you have to walk with that for 1 to 3 months before you can take it out, and then you can get what it is that you actually want. Yes. Or you can go to a piercer, and then you get really scared because the piercer has tattoo up on his neck and those big holes in the ears, and you're thinking, oh my God, that's not, but they're really good at piercing. And she's actually made a chain of stores where she merges that. So she curates your ear. So that is an example of that. If I wanted that, I could take a picture of my ear, and then they will sit and curate my ear with these beautiful jewelry and send it back and forth to me. And then I can go into the shop, and then I can do all the stuff that Christina is saying with the mask and the hygiene. But a lot of it, maybe 90% of it is going on online. And some of it could also be automated. But then I have that high touch experience that I'm going into a store and then I'm actually getting the whole charade, the whole shebang in my ear, like 5 or 6 piercings with this jewelry. And then I'm walking out of there thinking I got something truly special. Marie Tash is like a high-end example. It's very expensive to go there, but taking away that point is that, okay, where is there a problem in the market where I could say I can pick this and merge it together and bring high tech and high touch into this experience where I can, we call the trend automagic. So it's sense of automating it. You're putting automatic into it. And I think that if we are going more and more in that direction where the digital needs the human side, and when we can merge that, maybe in the first months or years that we are doing it, it's expensive and it takes a lot of time. But when you do that, you're also getting your soul into it. You know, you're getting your body and your mind into it. And I think that is what the next generation of successful companies can do.
Very, very, very interesting. Yeah, true. Garrett, what do you think about that? You also touched on touch points.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you just mentioned, especially because it's that personalization of that tech experience, emerging that omni-channel kind of chain there, that really is the future. So I actually subscribe to a monthly subscription box. In 1 month, I actually got a handwritten letter in the box, and they have 40,000 monthly subscribers. But getting that handwritten letter made me so excited. And that was months ago, months before this happened. But just thinking about how we can still take things that might have disappeared, but things that used to mean sincerity and personalization, and like we understand each other, and bringing that in together, I can only see that doing wonders within the domain.
Christina, do you have a final comment here on that?
I have a funny comment that I'm now realizing in the chat that people were not actually seeing my slides, even though I was showing them.
Yes,
so I'd be happy to send the slides if anyone is interested, just for them to see the intervention. So I didn't know.
So did you hear my question?
Yes. Oh, no. So about can you repeat the question again?
Yeah. So I was just wondering what your take on that is about making things more personal.
Yes, I think that, as Garrett said, it's important to resume things that before were updated, like handwritten notes, because we are lacking that social contact. So, for example, and I read a very interesting article that I'm now applying. When we are doing these Zoom calls, let's make sure that we reserve first 5 minutes to do some personal talk with our counterpart, because people need to make sure people need to feel that they are having this contact, this personal contact, that even though we are not in person, I care about your life, what you are doing, and if you're okay. So if we make sure to have these 5 minutes of just like actually and genuinely making sure that people are okay and what is going on in their life, even though we're not seeing each other in person, I think that can make a huge difference in a sustainable manner, especially considering that now a lot of people are working from home and they need this kind of personal interaction that they had when they were in the office.
So how can you bring that personal interaction into your communication, for instance, like in the gym with the posters?
Yeah, so for example, let's say...
Sorry for interrupting. Can we make this maybe the last question, just to kind of wrap up, and then you can wrap up?
The last question. Yes, it will.
Yes. So let's say that we can introduce in the poster, instead of cartoons, maybe we can change every month the poster and put actual clients of the gym, of course, given consent and everything. So to make sure that I'm realizing that you are complying with the public health guideline, and I'm rewarding you because of this, and this is a reputational reward as well, and that can make people feel closer to the guideline and to this new reality that they need to comply with.
Those are such good ideas. Thank you so much for that. And well, time is almost up, so I really, really want to thank all of you being here with us. And I want to thank, of course, Jim Sugarman, who has put a lot of hard work and effort and heart into this. Of course, I want to thank our sponsor, the Johns Hopkins University Schools of Education, Center of Technology. And least but not last, all of you guys, our keynote speakers, this is for you, flowers. And with that, I will pass on the word to the other panelists coming up right now. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Susan.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.